When you think of the biblical story of David and Goliath, what comes to mind? A shepherd boy with no chance against a giant warrior, yet David wins. We see it as a miracle, the underdog defeating the unbeatable favourite. But Malcolm Gladwell argues we've misunderstood the story. In his 2013 bestseller, David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants, Gladwell explains that David wasn't as weak as we think, and Goliath wasn't as strong as he seemed. More broadly, he shows that disadvantages can sometimes be advantages, and advantages can sometimes be weaknesses. This book challenges how we think about power, success, and struggle. Welcome to 10-Minute Books, the channel where we break down the world's most powerful books into practical lessons you can absorb in just 10 minutes. Today, we're exploring David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. A fascinating look at how underdogs win, and why disadvantages can sometimes turn out to be strengths. The core idea: rethinking advantage and disadvantage. Gladwell's central message is that what we think of as strengths and weaknesses aren't always what they seem. A so-called disadvantage, like dyslexia or being smaller and weaker, can force people to develop skills and strategies that ultimately give them the upper hand. Similarly, advantages like wealth, size, or power can create blind spots, complacency, or overconfidence. The real story of David and Goliath. Gladwell begins with the famous biblical battle. We assume David was the underdog, but when you look closer, the odds were in his favour. David was a skilled slinger, and slings were devastating weapons. A stone hurled from a sling could reach the speed of a bullet. David never planned to fight hand to hand. He fought at a distance. Meanwhile, Goliath may have suffered from acromegaly, a condition causing giantism, but also poor eyesight and limited agility. He expected hand-to-hand combat. Instead, David turned the supposed disadvantage of being smaller into the advantage of speed and precision. The lesson: sometimes the underdog wins because they don't play by the giant's rules. The inverted U-curve. Gladwell introduces the idea of the inverted U-curve to show that too much of a good thing can become bad. For example, wealth. Up to a point, money helps families provide stability, but beyond a certain level, wealth makes it harder to raise grounded children, because excess creates entitlement or lack of drive. The same applies to class sizes in schools. Very small classes can be as ineffective as very large ones, because too few voices limit diversity of discussion. The point: advantages have diminishing returns, and disadvantages can sometimes create balance. Desirable difficulties. Gladwell explores the concept of desirable difficulties, challenges that, while painful, ultimately create growth. Take dyslexia. Many dyslexics struggle in school, but some, like successful entrepreneurs, develop extraordinary listening, problem-solving, or perseverance skills as a result. The difficulty forces them to adapt in ways that become strengths. Of course, not every disadvantage leads to growth. Some difficulties overwhelm. But for those who survive and adapt, disadvantages can become hidden assets. The limits of power. Gladwell also explores how overwhelming power can backfire. For example, military strength often provokes more resistance instead of compliance. The British, despite being the most powerful empire, struggled against weaker forces because their strength generated rebellion. The same is true in policing, parenting, or business. Excessive force or control doesn't always produce obedience. Sometimes it sparks defiance. Case studies of underdogs. The book is filled with stories of underdogs turning weakness into strength. A girls' basketball team of short, inexperienced players, wins by using a full-court press, running non-stop, overwhelming taller opponents with speed and persistence. Civil rights activists in Birmingham, Alabama, used their lack of traditional power to their advantage. By staging protests that highlighted brutality, they forced the world to see the injustice and created momentum for change. A man with dyslexia who struggled in school became a top trial lawyer because he developed extraordinary memory and verbal skills to compensate. These stories remind us that the path to success is rarely about having the biggest advantages. It's about using what you have in creative ways. The role of struggle. Gladwell argues that struggle often shapes greatness. Many people who achieve extraordinary things had to overcome adversity. The adversity itself forced them to build resilience, creativity, and resourcefulness. This doesn't mean suffering is always good, but it shows that obstacles can sometimes prepare us for opportunities in ways comfort never could. The danger of overconfidence. On the other hand, those with overwhelming advantages often underestimate underdogs. Giants assume their size, wealth, or power guarantees victory. But these advantages can blind them to risk, make them inflexible, or prevent them from adapting. History is full of examples where giants lost because they failed to see the strengths hidden in their opponent's weaknesses. Practical lessons from David and Goliath. So how can we apply Gladwell's lessons? Don't assume your disadvantages are fatal. Ask how they might give you unique strengths. Don't assume advantages guarantee success. Consider how they might create blind spots. When facing a giant, don't play by their rules. Use creativity and agility. Embrace difficulties as training grounds for resilience and skill, criticism and balance. Some critics argue that Gladwell cherry-picks stories to fit his narrative, or that not every difficulty becomes desirable. That's true, not every disadvantage produces growth. But his point is not that all adversity is good, but that we should question the assumptions we make about power and weakness. Modern relevance. In today's world of startups versus big corporations, grassroots movements versus governments, and individuals challenging institutions, David and Goliath is especially relevant. Underdogs continue to win by being faster, more creative, and more willing to take risks. It also speaks to personal life. Maybe you feel like an underdog in your career, education, or relationships. Gladwell's message is that being underestimated can be an asset. Struggle can sharpen you in ways comfort never could. The big takeaway. David and Goliath teaches that advantages and disadvantages are not what they seem. Weaknesses can become strengths, and strengths can become weaknesses. Underdogs often win not in spite of their disadvantages, but because of them. The question is, are you seeing your struggles as dead ends, or as the very things that could become your strengths? That was David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, broken down in under 20 minutes. Which idea resonates most with you? Desirable difficulties, the inverted U curve, or the real story of David versus Goliath? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this summary, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to 10-Minute Books, and ring the bell so you never miss our weekly breakdowns of life-changing books. Thanks for watching, and remember, the underdog isn't always as weak as they seem. Sometimes the giant's strength is their greatest weakness.